Hey everyone, I'm Cecil Laird.
Jaime Fuego here.
And we're back for another edition of the Horror Show News.
Scary, informative.
Our top story today has to do with one of my favorite horror franchises, Child's Play. Writer, director, and original creator of Chucky, Mr. Don Mancini, actually just tweeted out last week, directly to Jennifer Tilly no less, asking her, hey, for filming Child's Play 7, should we film in Cape Town, being Cape Town, South Africa? And of course, Miss Tilly responded saying, oh yes, I love it there, the crews are fantastic, and you can't beat the scenery. So apparently, we have gotten confirmation via social media that a seventh movie is indeed coming. We did originally receive news about a year ago, after the release of the sixth installment, Curse of Chucky, that Mr. Mancini had indeed begun writing the seventh installment of the series. However, this is the first we've been hearing about it since then. And not only that, but actually as of today when we're recording this, which is a few days ago when you guys are seeing this, Mr. Brad Dourif, who plays the voice of Chucky in the movies, his daughter, Fiona, was actually the lead in Curse of Chucky, apparently has been jumping on the Twitter wagon, retweeting Mr. Mancini and Jennifer Tilly, and actually throwing in little hints here and there that, oh yeah, that would be great if we went to Cape Town and things like that. So apparently, Miss Fiona is going to be reprising her role if this is any sort of indication. So be on the lookout for Child's Play 7, hopefully shooting soon and releasing even sooner, even though that's not possible.
Very exciting news, especially for my co-host here, but I'm actually curious if there is going to be a harkening back to a little humor and a little bit of the horrific, like in the first Jennifer Tilly installment, which was The Bride of Chucky. So we'll see where the tone ends up. But as far as tone ending up and things shifting possibly, our next story is about an R-rated script for the next Spawn film, a reboot by creator Todd McFarlane, being finally finished. Perhaps the success of Deadpool at not just the domestic but the international box office had something to do with it. It's already made over $500 million in just 10 days, and now all of the floodgates have opened for R-rated fare being considered at studios. And here's to hoping that the tone shift that McFarlane has discussed, which is more of a detective case file, similar to what we've seen in the Sam and Twitch series, and also with Spawn being less involved in the storytelling and more like a dark phantom overseeing the proceedings, like in the Spawn the Undead series. So only time will tell if ever this film actually sees the light of day, but being a big fan of both Image and Spawn, I'm very excited to see what transpires there.
Absolutely, I'll be looking forward as well. I have every issue, so let's do it, Todd.
You got me beat there.
Moving on to our next story, this one is all about the classic horror series Hellraiser, of which there is yet another new installment coming by the title of Hellraiser Judgment. Now, this one has been making some headlines last week because apparently there's a bit of controversy going on with it. First off, it's actually being written and directed by the guy that was the makeup artist for Mr. Doug Bradley from Hellraiser Bloodline all the way up through, I think, Hellseeker or one of those, before they actually did the last relaunch, which was basically a movie made in order to maintain the rights to Hellraiser. It was a very low budget version. It was the first non-Doug Bradley Pinhead Hellraiser, and it was not received well. Now apparently this one, which is being done by the same guy, is apparently moving forward without Doug Bradley. And Mr. Bradley put out on his personal Facebook a little story about how this all went, where he was first approached saying that a new script was being written and we'd like to send it to you to read, and before he was able to actually read it, he received a non-disclosure agreement, which basically stated that you can't talk about this and blah, 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 but it had one last point, which stuck in Doug Bradley's craw, which basically said, this also prohibits any actors from talking at conventions unduly about the movie, which essentially might be a dig at Mr. Bradley, who talks to people at conventions, especially us. We actually got to interview him at Mad Monster in 2015, so check out our old episode for the interview with Mr. Doug Bradley. But it seemed like Mr. Bradley took that as a personal dig, and he said, well, if you guys don't think I can keep a secret, it's probably best I'm just not involved. And so the production is forging ahead without him, and not only that, but it's apparently got a rather large horror star attached to it, being Heather Langenkamp, who of course was Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 3, and played herself in the 7th installment, which was Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Fantastic movie.
Absolutely, and we'll see how she translates into the Hellraiser series, or how the movie even turns out, period, without the definitive Pinhead, Mr. Doug Bradley.
So yeah, that's a translation that I am curious about, but fingers firmly crossed because Doug Bradley was so iconic in that role. So we'll see if maybe they can redeem themselves with this latest installment. And so for our latest story and last one of the day, we are talking another transition as far as mediums go. Recently, Joe Hill, that's right, the son of the King, Mr. Stephen King, he has seen a great deal of fame recently in the comic world with his book Lock and Key, and he is actually about to re-team with artist Gabriel Rodriguez to actually work on a Tales from the Dark Side anthology comic book. Now, he had originally optioned the idea to the CW with hopes of reviving it as a television series in the same vein as the one which our beloved Mr. George Romero did in the 80s, Tales from the Dark Side, but unfortunately that was not to be, but it is seeing a new life by IDW Publishing in June this summer. So that's very exciting that he's going to be able to tackle some more of the horrific. He's done great work with Rodriguez previously, and another artist who's going to be contributing alternates to the book is actually worked with Joe Hill previously on The Wraith, and so lots of guys that he's feeling comfortable with, and it's cool that we are still going to see his take on the anthology series. It's supposed to have single encompassing stories that all tie together in almost like a large arc as well. So kind of exciting, and yeah, tough to go wrong with Joe Hill, though. He definitely comes from a wonderful pedigree as far as horror goes.
Absolutely, and I think that's a perfect time to segue into the editorializing. I would like to say about this particular story, I'm pumped, because I didn't even know when you mentioned the story to me that Joe Hill was behind the revival.
He is, he's writing it.
And not only that, but the fact that he's re-teaming with Gabriel to do the artwork. I have every volume of Lock and Key, and it's been
you turned me on
one
to
of my favorite graphic novel series, comic book series. Screw you, graphic novels. They're comic books.
Comic books for adults.
Exactly. But it was fantastic. The artwork is unbelievable. He also did, that particular artist did a Clive Barker translation. I have that as well, and the art is just outstanding. So I can't wait to see what he does re-teaming with Mr. Hill in the Tales from the Dark Side universe, because we both love anthologies.
Oh, we love it.
And so let's see how they do in a comic book form, because I haven't seen too many of those, and I do love them when they come around. They're usually big sort of graphic novel collections of short stories, but if they're doing it in single issue form, it'll be interesting to see how it's approached.
Yeah, I'm just happy it's going to see the light of day, because even though the CW did not feel like the right place for that sort of show, I was curious to see what would happen. I mean, you love Teen Wolf, and that's on MTV, and I did not think that was going to have any success at all.
CW has Supernatural. CW has Vampire Diaries and the originals. They have a lot of what could be considered horror. iZombie. I love iZombie. I don't watch the vampire shows, but they do have a long line of horror shows, so it wouldn't have been completely out of character for the network, but it probably wouldn't have been the best fit, though.
Yeah, I'm excited. This could be very cool. Anthology horror in any medium I get excited about.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think about the Bradley Lists Hellraiser?
I was looking at some of those concept photos of what the new Cenobites look like, and some of them look cool.
There's going to be a lot of nudity because the character descriptions for the Hellraiser have been released. So most of the female characters that are going to be cast all say nudity required or partial nudity required. So I'm not sure how highbrow they're going with this particular iteration.
Probably not too much. Hey, if we get to see Heather Langenkamp, she's still a foxy lady even at this age. So.
She is, but I would feel bad. It'd be like seeing my mom naked, so I don't know if we should go that route.
Better than an Olsen twin, I don't know. But nonetheless, I heard that this was rushed into production. Did you hear something about that?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me again. Yeah, the rights issues come up about every 3 years, I believe. It's like 3-year contracts, or maybe even 5, because I think that Hellraiser is actually... No, you know what? That Hellraiser, the most recent one, is actually probably about 7 years old. Blockbuster was still around when it came out.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, you're not missing much. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there, for sure.
Yeah, indeed. So next we're going to go to my first story. I know you're a big Spawn fan. Maybe even have me beat on this. I mean, we're talking all the mini-series, the different side books and stuff. I have every appearance
of Spawn in any comic ever, except for a couple of Toy Fair editions that Fuego's got. So if
he's got me beat as far as bulk.
If Fuego happens to accidentally shuffle off this Mortal Coil and a couple of his comics go missing, don't look
who they're going to. No. He doesn't even have to steal them. They're going to him. But the original film, they put out that director's cut that was a little rougher around the edges, but I thought the original cartoon on HBO, tremendous. The film lacking in a lot of areas. Yeah.
Honey, where'd you get this?
He gave it to me, Mommy. He did.
Who, sweetheart?
The sad man.
Wonder now.
Yeah, very, very well done. And yet that only explored, the first maybe 20, 30 issues.
Oh
as
yeah,
far as
with
the
Billy
story arc
Kincaid
goes.
and a lot of the
Classic
original,
Spawn.
yeah, Overkill and all those cool villains before they
Yeah.
all went away.
And then they started focusing more on the Redeemer and all that stuff. Like you
Yeah,
saw in
all the
video
heaven and
game.
hell, and then a group of vampires for some reason around issue 105 to 130 or something.
I felt like
that.
after they killed Malbolgia, they didn't know what to do.
I
as
agree.
Far as the,
I agree. They're
the whole
finally getting
universe
it back now.
Yeah,
Finally.
because Al is actually back. I haven't read in a number of issues. I'm assuming this pen script by McFarlane is going to go straight up reboot status.
Not only is Al back, but if you guys are interested, Al is back. Wanda has been killed, and he is now traveling through hell and about to fight Satan himself in order to salvage Wanda's soul.
Yeah, because
It
Malbolgia was like a minion of Satan, like
He
a
was
higher
just
up
he was
minion
the
or-
leader of one of the circles, not the leader of all the circles of hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now Satan is in the picture, and Spawn is fighting for Wanda's soul. And if you guys know anything about the original Spawn series, then that is going to intrigue you, and
Yeah,
it's really
yeah.
cool. And Eric Larson of Savage Dragon fame, who helped form Image
Yeah.
with Todd McFarlane, has been doing the artwork now.
That's
for a
pretty
couple
awesome
issues.
because he's been working on Savage Dragon since it began.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
So he's
talk about a
brought
lengthy
his.
tenure.
Well, imagine him drawing a massive Satan fighting a really tiny Spawn by
Well,
comparison.
he was drawing
It's really
the tiny
cool.
stuff with God talking to
Yeah,
Savage
exactly.
Dragon.
It's a
back
lot
in
of
the
that.
day,
It's
so-
Satan's just as big as
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
so there you go.
Very cool.
So yeah, I'm excited
R-rated
to
Spawn
see
though, bring it, right?
R-rated.
I mean,
Absolutely, the HBO show was R-rated, and it was more the better for it. So I hope that it actually comes to fruition. This has been long gestating, and
What do you think about them saying not really an action film like the original
I don't
movie
mind.
was more so
You know
like a
what?
spooky
They're
detective?
they're
kinda-
taking a cue from the short film that came out about a year and a half, 2
Yeah.
years ago,
I
and
remember it
it
well.
was just a very quick appearance of Spawn at the end. But it makes more sense. Spawn
He's
is
almost like an
tough to
avenging
make.
angel type thing.
He's a balance keeper for a long time, which he was in that Spawn the Undead
That we were
series.
talking about,
Exactly.
yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what version of Spawn we're going to get in this.
Yeah.
But he does work as a boogeyman that appears when necessary,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the protagonist. I will be happy to see it if they take that approach.
Yeah, I felt like they developed Sam and Twitch enough as characters where they could lead the story and have Al be more of a.
That would be great. That would make a lot of sense.
That could be cool.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so yeah, bring
but
it
I
on.
hope they don't redo the origin again, because we don't need that. I don't think we need that.
quick flashback like they have in.
Exactly.
You always have to do something to bring the uninitiated up to speed, but.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers firmly crossed that not only does this script actually go into production, but actually get made instead of jumping through. Maybe Deadpool and seeing that success, maybe this will be one of those Pandora's box opening things where it'll be for the good.
Hopefully so. Now, as far as the last story goes, how do you feel about the Chuckster coming back?
I'm not the biggest Chucky fan compared to Cecil here. I actually was
And he's off the
disappointed.
show!
He's fired! I actually didn't really like Curse of Chucky very much.
Really?
I didn't. A lot of people said it was a return to form.
It was
big.
oh, yeah,
I
totally
I
was.
felt like it was more like it was trying to be serious, but it failed for me. My favorite in the series is probably Bride of Chucky. Number 2 is very close. The first one took a serious tone. Second
Love
and third
number
they
2.
shifted more.
Oh, the Toy
into-
Factory is amazing.
2 is good. 2 might be my favorite now that I think
2
about
is
it.
my favorite, 100%.
Yeah. Third one with the.
I like
the
it just
scouts at the
because
camp
I like there was a lot of really cool scenes when Whitehurst jumps on the grenade, when the dude gets crushed in the trash compactor.
Yeah, but
when
them
when
putting
Andy
the
first
bullets and the
sees
fake
Chucky being
guns
carried
and-
by the general like across the field, I was like, oh, like I don't know. Again, I'm a huge Chucky fan,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you're not gonna be able to hear a
I
lot
didn't
of
see him
negative
as a
out of me
kid,
unless
though,
we're talking
and-
about Seed.
Yeah, and that was obviously the worst in the series. But I didn't see it as a kid. I know you did, and so the association.
It was one of my first. It was actually Child's Play 3 was my very first horror movie that I
In
saw in
theater,
the
you
theater
told me,
with
right?
producer Dave. In
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah, that's awesome. So I mean, I at least appreciate the fact that they have kept everything in continuity in all of these movies, including in the 7th one where didn't in the end credits.
that was the 6th.
that
7th
was
is,
the 6th
in
one,
Mark,
yes.
right? Yeah, no. In the end credits, good old Andy Barclay, played
All
by the
grown up,
original Andy Barclay. So they brought back the original Andy, and he got the drop on Chucky at the very end. Although we didn't see exactly what happened, we heard what might have happened. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how we come back, because Chucky at the very end kind of won. So we'll see. I'm excited though.
Yeah, and it felt like it was existing in its own world, at least originally, and then it was all that post-credit stuff that even tied it into the previous two.
Well, it was
Bride.
even before the
Kind of.
post credits when the
staples started the show and everything.
exactly. So if you guys haven't seen it yet, check out Curse of Chucky. It was a good time, despite what this boy says.
It wasn't bad, It just I don't know. I like Puppet Master.
Fair enough. I know. See, and we could go back and forth on that.
The last few of that have not been so great either. But hey,
Hey.
anything with killer puppets, I'll at least watch, and you guys should too. Check it out and make your own decision.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Horror Show News. Thanks very much for watching. I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias, I've been Jaime Fuego.
And we'll be back again in just a couple of weeks to give you all the news that's fit to scream about. And until then, remember,
Stay scared.